Now, it's a decade since the start of the Iraq War, a war which left more than 130,000 Iraqi civilians dead and traumatised an entire nation. So do the politicians who led us into that military action have any regrets today? Our chief correspondent, Alex Thomson, has been talking to Jack Straw, who was then Foreign Secretary, about the conflict and state-sponsored kidnapping and torture.
Baghdad today, 10 years on from the West's invasion and occupation, another bomb attack, another 22 Iraqi lives ended. The violence and sectarian division of the country has continued from the second the US Air Force unleashed its arsenal on the country a decade ago. The British Army ending up somewhat sidelined in the south, derided by the Americans, the Iraqi militias there undefeated. And from the post-9/11 world of Iraqi and Afghan invasions, the era of the West kidnapping and torturing people in distant countries, the era of rendition. One such victim, Abdul Hakim Belhaj, says he was kidnapped and tortured under British control and now wants an apology. From this man, the former Foreign Secretary, Jack Straw. Many in Britain want an apology too for his part in taking Britain into a war for reasons which did not exist. This morning, I spoke to him about WMD, the dodgy dossier, torture and kidnapping. But first, the simple notion that 10 years on, Iraq is a mess.
I don't accept that. I certainly accept that the post-military invasion period went very badly wrong, and there were reasons for that. And there has been a level of bloodshed, certainly in the first few years after the invasion, which was just terrible. If you now look at the situation, what you find is, for example, a majority of Iraqis saying that they're optimistic about the future of Iraq. So I'm not saying it's all been for the good, of course I'm not, and there were many mistakes made on the way. I made my decision 10 years ago, and I stand by it.
Was the war right?
The decision to go to war was, in my judgment, morally right. If I'd taken the opposite view, I would not have supported it.
You took our country to war on a dossier that was false.
No, with great respect, I did not take the country to war on a dossier that was false.
But it was false, and that was the primary reason
in many respects it was not false. Let's be clear about that. And the dossier itself...
I'm sorry, but there were no weapons of mass destruction. There was no 45-minute warning. This was wrong.
Sorry. The view that Saddam had all these weapons was a view that was held across the world. Moreover,
but it was wrong.
It
was wrong, Mr. Straw.
But
that's
as it turned out, when we got into Iraq, we found that he'd got rid of his WMD, and he managed to trick the rest of the world.
We've been taken to war on a falsehood. I just want you to accept that simple.
No, I'm not
that's
accepting
truth.
that.
I'm sorry, we got it wrong. Why won't you say that?
Well, I deeply regret the fact.
Why won't you say sorry?
Well, hang on a second. And of course, I'm sorry about the loss of life. But what I'm not going to do is to try and wriggle out of my responsibility for making that decision at the time. That's why, because I knew what was likely to be the effect, that people, for example, on both sides would be killed. I just think it's dreadful. If you think seriously about an issue like that, it was the most significant decision I have had to make in my life, and probably ever will.
Taking a country to war on a false prospectus is about as serious as it gets, and I find it extraordinary that you can't just say sorry for that.
But what I'm not accepting, sorry, is that this, of course I accept that there was no WMD in the event, but there were reasons for that, which nobody understood at the time. No one, not Germany, not France, who also had the same belief as us about the threat that was posed, but had come to a different view about whether you needed more months to allow Saddam to comply. That was the argument in the Security Council. The fact that, as it turned out, there was no WMD, yes, was a major mistake, but it was a mistake made by the whole of the international community.
Do you have any regrets about Britain being sucked into this process of rendition, which is a politician's word for kidnapping and torturing people?
Well, there is, at the moment, as you'll be aware, there is a legal action taking place of which I'm a defendant. And as far as I'm concerned, I've always was and always would be scrupulous in ensuring that any actions I took were consistent with my legal duties. I'd like to be able to say a lot more about this, and I will do at an appropriate stage, but precisely because I'm a defendant in this action, you'll understand that I can't say any more at the moment.
You're talking about the Belhaj case?
I'm talking about the Belhaj case.
You can get yourself off that by saying sorry again and giving them
with great respect. What I'm not going to do, I'd be delighted to say a great deal about this, but I'm not certainly going to take part in the legal proceedings by way of the agency of a television interview.
But we can talk more widely, can we not? And it seems extraordinary to even have to ask this question of a former Foreign Secretary and Home Secretary, but is the kidnapping and torturing of people by nation states wrong?
Well, of course it's wrong, and we had no part in that. Of course it is wrong.
Are you sure we had no part in it?
Absolutely. It is wrong. It's absolutely wrong for any of that to have happened.
And you're sure that the UK government had no part in it? That's what you just said.
Well, I'm absolutely sure that I had no part in this. Let us be clear about this.
That's a different thing.
Okay.
Right.
And there is going to be a full-scale judicial-led inquiry on the wider issues.
But it therefore follows that you may well think that the British government more generally might have been involved by virtue of what you just said.
I'm not getting into further conversation, if you don't mind, over that aspect. I understand.